It's my honor to introduce our speaker today, Mick Hall. He has been a member of the Peoria Downtown Rotary Club for 20 years. He serves as the Vice President and General Counsel at Bard Optical, where he runs the day-to-day operations and activities for the company. He grew up in Canton and is a graduate of Illinois State University and Southern Illinois University School of Law. Outside of work, Mick's passion has been coaching junior football and travel baseball. His coaching career has extended over 26 years, primarily in the Dunlap area. 13 years ago, Mick founded the Dunlap JFL Summer Skills Camp, a 3-day camp that draws around 150 kids ages 5 to 14. He has served on the board of the Dunlap JFL for many years. He's an instructor for the youth football coaches with the Junior Football League of Central Illinois. I think Zoe is he the president? Zoe, the president, is actually a former minor league umpire and has done several games at the ballpark. He is enshrined in the JFLOCI Coaches Hall of Fame. Mick is very active in Dunlap. He is the chairman of the Dunlap Educational Foundation, founder and president of the Dunlap Touchdown Club, and around the Mid-Illini Conference, we know him as the voice of the Dunlap High School football team, where he has been announcing games for the past 10 years. Mick lives in Dunlap with his wife, Jamie Webster Hall, who is an administrative law judge for DCFS. They have a total of 3 adult sons and a daughter who is a sophomore in Dunlap. So please give me a warm welcome to Mick.
Always good to be with fellow Rotarians. I was told, President Allen said we're running a little behind, so he has extended my speaking time to 3:30. So if you've got an issue, we'll start passing the bottle pretty soon. I mean, Rye can go a long way, right? So as you heard in that introduction, I've been a coach for a long time. And part of what led to the creation of this presentation, which this is the third Rotary group that I've spoken to, was about my experience in coaching football, number one, baseball, number two, and the things that are going on right now in youth sports. And some of them may be a surprise to you if you don't have kids participating right now. And so that led to the creation of this. I've got my clicker. All right. All right, great. So I want to just go over a brief history of the youth sports in America. A lot of people think, well, we've had youth sports around forever, right? Well, we haven't. In fact, here's some key dates to start off, and then I know it's probably hard for you to read at the back there. Massachusetts was the first state to create compulsory education laws and made kids go to school. That was in 1852. Prior to 1852, it was up to you to educate your kids, right? There was private schools available in certain locations, but not all. Massachusetts was the first to say every kid needs to go to school somewhere. And then as time went on, other states began to follow. By 1903, New York had established a public schools athletic league. The reason for that was they wanted to give the kids something to do, okay? After school was over, what were the kids doing? They were going to get in trouble. Okay, so let's give them sports as an outlet for all the things that they could be doing. By 1910, there were 17 different larger cities that had leagues for the kids to participate in. By 1914, that got down to the elementary level. And then by 1918, every state was requiring kids to go to school. Anybody want to take a guess at the last state to require their kids to be educated? It was not Illinois, Mississippi. It was the last one to go kicking and screaming to school. By the 1920s, club sports began to grow because you had sports for school, but what about when school wasn't in session? Or what about particularly sports that weren't school types of sports? Club sports began, okay? Little leagues and things like that. By the 1930s, though, a lot of those club sports were gone. They were gone primarily because of the Depression. There was no money left to pay for that. Sports took off in America. Organized sports took off. In fact, as you see on this slide there, that's a Little League team from 1939, and Little League exploded. By 1949, we had the World Series, the first Little League World Series. 10 years later, by 1959, there were 5,000 leagues. A league could have up to 20 or 30 teams, okay? So that's how much that grew. In the 60s, we had Pee Wee basketball, we had football, hockey, things of that nature began to explode. In 1995 came the AAU, and there were 100 sports that had championships at the AAU level. 10 years later, 250 sports, okay? So what's going on right now out there in sports world? Well, now, to be honest, things are changing. The kids are changing, okay? I know as a kid growing up on a farm outside of Canton, sports were everything to me. Well, now kids have a lot of other things that take their interest other than sports, right? And not all of them are good for them. So let's talk about the kids of 2022. Maybe you recognize some of this activity here. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, of course, it was their escape. It was what we did was play sports. Now kids have video games. They have smartphones. They have social media. They have their own YouTube pages, right? It's me, me, me. The idea of team first has been replaced by me first. What happens with that is you can develop some poor attitudes. The nice thing about sports is one of the things you learned was that team. I'm not important. Team is the most important thing. And so with the less number of kids playing sports, they were kind of becoming harder to deal with, right? Less communicative. Instead of being out with their friends playing sports, they're stuck in their room with a cell phone in their hand or a computer in their hand. Okay. By the way, there are kids out there who have YouTube pages that make more than $20,000 a month. There's a little boy who tests toys. He has a YouTube page. He makes about $50,000 a month because all the other kids go to his page to see if he liked the toys or not, right? 50 grand a month, pretty, all right, it's all right. So, participation in sports is going down. The research suggests in 2018, only 38% of kids 6 to 12 were playing in organized sports. 10 years prior to that, the number had been 45%. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was 60%. Okay? So kids are being influenced negatively, as it says there at the bottom, by friends and family members not to participate in sports, that it's a negative to participate in sports. And why? One of the examples that I mentioned there is concussions. You remember the movie Concussion, right? Did it have an impact? I will tell you as a youth football coach, the year after the movie Concussion, our numbers went down by 1/3, okay? They are only now starting to recover to the pre-concussion movie position. So one of the things I wanted to address just as part of this, and very quickly, is just the truth about concussions. Part of the problem is in the past was our definition of concussion was losing consciousness, okay? Well, that's not an accurate definition of it. Or you would hear coaches back in my time in the 80s talk about you got your bell rung, right? Well, now we know that that's not actually true. The true definition of concussion is the alteration of the neurological function that may not result in loss of consciousness, but may be due to a direct blow to the head or a blow to the body that results in the forces transmitted to the head, all right? There are some misconceptions about concussions. And again, I go back to the movie, okay? If the movie would have been called Sprained Left Knee or Sprained Left Ankle, okay, everybody would have talked about how bad it was to walk up and down stairs, all right? But here's what happened with concussions. So there are some things assumptions that I think uneducated folks, people who don't know the research, talk about. One of them is there's more concussions today than ever before. That's just simply not true, and here's the reason why. We don't know how many concussions there were before, okay? Back then, as I mentioned, you got your bell rung, or you just fell down and you saw stars. No one reported that, okay? So there's no baseline to compare current data to, all right? Number two, concussions are the most prevalent injury in youth sports. Not even in the top 4. They're actually number 5, okay? Ankle injuries, knee injuries come before concussions, all right? So it's not the most prevalent thing that happens. Next, kids shouldn't play sports because they could ultimately get CTE. There are no studies that link CTE to children, not even to high school. Okay, why is that? Well, A, the research doesn't go that far. B, to do it, you have to have the brain, right, of someone who's been affected by that. The people that you've got are where they've diagnosed CTE are people who've had repetitive injuries at the professional level. Okay, years and years worth, not simply with kids. And I will tell you, there's a great TikTok going out there right now talking about the number of people who actually make it to the NFL versus the number who play as little kids. It's something like, 8 billion kids play youth sports, youth football, for example. To get to the NFL, it's 0.1% of that amount. Okay, so it has nothing to do with little kids. Next, coaches don't care about concussions. Of course we do. We're coaching our own kids. We're coaching kids that we know. Of course we care if they have a concussion. I will tell you that one of the big changes is I had to get educated and trained on concussions. And now if I have a player who gets a concussion, they're out until a doctor tells me that they're back in. Not mom, not dad, but a doctor, okay? I will tell you, most dads will say they're ready to go the second half. Okay, and then it's usually accompanied with, he's got a hard head. It comes from his mom. Next, the rate of injury in boys sports is much higher than girls sports. Not true. Absolutely not true. All right. The rate of injury, look again at the number of kids participating in the number of injuries. That's absolutely not true. Girls actually are more likely to get an injury than boys. Next, is anything being done about concussions? Sure there is. By the way, that's J.J. Watt right there. He's wearing a new helmet. It's called the Rydell Axiom Smart Helmet. Right now, if you go out to most JFL fields, high school fields, college fields, and you go to get a helmet, they try to get one that fits you best. The Axiom actually takes a 3D model of your head and a foam insert is created so it fits you exactly. Okay, so that helmet is your helmet and it won't fit anybody else, because if your melon's a little off, that's okay. Your foam thing fits perfectly for your head. He's wearing one of those. At Dunlap, because of our touchdown club, we've had the ability to reach out to Rydell and say to them, we would like to be one of your test schools for this type of helmet. $750 a piece. Okay, so they're very expensive helmets. A regular helmet, by the way, is $350. So $750 is a lot of money, but we're looking into whether or not we could pay for that on behalf of our kids. And then, of course, educating both the coaches, rule changes, and educating players. If you don't feel well, you have to let us know. Okay, and that's a big thing for a lot of kids. A lot of kids don't want to stop playing, even when they're hurt. Okay. Attitude. Now, maybe you've seen a kid like this before. Maybe some of you have one at home. Okay? I used to. All right. I used to. One of my sons, his name is Cooper. Cooper actually graduates from college a week from Sunday. He's graduating early. When he was in the third grade, Coop was a little guy. He was the smallest kid on our football team. Okay, he was 50 pounds in the third grade. All right. Well, he and his brothers, they were giving my wife a lot of garbage one day. And so I came home and I heard about it. And so I set all the boys down and I told them, I said, listen, no more mouth. I said, the day I hear your mouth, you better be big enough to take me out in the backyard and whip my butt. You hear me? And they're all looking at me like, okay. So about 2 weeks goes by and I'm in the kitchen and I hear my son Cooper mouthing off. Okay. So I walked around the corner and looked at him. I said, Coop, you big enough to take me out in the backyard with my butt? He looked up and he goes, I'm thinking about it. So I've seen attitude. Okay? I've had that in my house. So again, attitude's not new. It's out there. It's just that right now there can be more of it because kids aren't involved in organized sports. By the way, the participation in organized sports is not simply something you hear from a coach like me. University of Missouri put together, their health system put together this statement. This is on their website. And this is about why participation in team sports is so important. Okay? They encourage kids to participate in team sports. They end up doing better academically. They're able to have teamwork and to problem solve. It boosts self-esteem. It reduces pressure, okay? And I will tell you, especially in the world now of social media, kids are under pressure like never before, right? They're under pressure like never before. I see my daughter, who actually knows these two young ladies right here, my daughter Ruby, she knows these two. I see her TikToks, I see the stuff that she's, it's amazing the kind of pressure that can be put on kids right now, and sports helps with that. But there are some bad parts to participating, or at least things have changed. You may have heard of this NIL, name, image, and likeness. What does that mean? It means I, as an athlete, can get money for use of my name, image, and likeness. Okay. There was a big lawsuit a few years ago. You remember a basketball player from UCLA by the name of Ed O'Bannon. Okay. And Ed O'Bannon sued the NCAA because they had a video game that had him in it, and he wasn't getting paid. And he said, my name, image, and likeness is mine, and I should be paid for it. And the Supreme Court agreed with him, okay? Well, what sprung up then was the new name, image, and likeness rules for the NCAA, where you can now collect money, a lot of money, and that has now filtered down to states for high school kids. This young lady right there is a high school soccer player. Her name is Rylan Turner. Nike signed her name, image, and likeness deal for $1 million. Okay, she's in high school. All right. The Nike also just signed a senior in high school to a 4-year name, image, and likeness deal for $8 million. Okay, $8 million. The kid's a senior in high school. I assume he's going to buy a new car. Like I said, Illinois is one of the first states, along with others, who have passed the rules that allow those kids to go out and do that now. What's the biggest problem affecting youth sports right now? You want to take a guess?
Parents.
It's parents, right? How sad. These are actual photographs of parents at their kids' events, okay? Kids' events. These are a couple signs that the different leagues that are around have put up, because we're trying to remind people, if you're negative, we don't want you here. If you're positive, we'd love to have you come and cheer on for your kids, right? And you know who some of these parents are. You sit next to them in the stands, chatterbox, always coaches always got a problem. My kid never plays, right? Umpires always wrong, okay, stuff like that. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, we do have parents who come and they just cheer on their kids. They're helpful. They volunteer. When I was coaching over in Canton, I had a dad who would not shut up, okay? Wouldn't shut up when we were in the game. And my two best players were his sons. And he's yelling at them for them to do things that were the opposite of what I wanted them to do, okay? So I'm like, what am I going to do with this guy, okay? I went to him and I said, will you do me a favor? Would you mind videotaping our practices and games? And he's like, oh, I'd love to, coach, whatever I can do, okay? So we have our first game. He videotapes the whole thing. And I told him, watch the video, and then I want to bring the team in, and we'll watch it all after practice one night. So we go to their house, and he puts the thing on, and all you could hear was what? Him screaming, okay? He was so embarrassed, I never heard another word from him. Right? So if there are any youth coaches out there looking for a way to shut a parent up, give them a camera. Tell them you're going to do that. By the way, I gave this talk over in Farmington, and I happened to have mentioned who that dad was because he happens to be a Rotarian in Canton, and it got right back to him. And he was probably proud of it, frankly. Okay? These are some top 10 tips for parents. By the way, the two people standing there on the side in handcuffs attacked a softball referee for making a bad call involving their daughter. What should you do? Number one, come and watch your kids, and remember they're watching you, okay? Give you an example. Coaching the JFL team for Dunlap, it would have been about the 5th grade team, and we went to Notre Dame, okay? Notre Dame, they play at Markville School, typically a great place to go play a game, and so we're there, and my team was very, very good. This group of kids that I had 3rd through 7th grade ended up going to the state championship game when they were at the high school. Okay, so this is a really, really good group of kids. So we are beating Notre Dame. They've got no points, and their running back finally made it around the corner. He's running down the field. He's going to score a touchdown. He got to about the 20-yard line, and as he's running, he turned around and went like this to my kids. Okay? Referee didn't like it, threw a flag. Okay? So instead of getting the touchdown, they threw the flag where it landed and backed him up 15 yards. Okay? All of a sudden, I hear this lady lose her mind. Okay? Come to find out, it's his grandma. And she's very unhappy. Okay? And every other word is an F-bomb. All right? They had to get the director out there. She wouldn't stop. So the referees told us, get on a knee. We're going to have to call somebody. Pretty soon a squad car comes there. Okay? 2 officers get out of the squad car. They come over to her. They're trying to calm her down. She's yelling. Okay? One of the officers put his hand on her back to try to turn her to walk away. She turned around and shoved the cop. Well, as you can imagine, that got her laced up. Okay? And at the moment it happened, I looked over to the other team, and the kid whose grandma is getting, Meemaw's getting busted. Okay? He did not have the look of pride on his face. Okay? He looked horrified. And of course, all the other kids on the team were just staring at him. Okay? And I felt so bad for that kid. So anyway, come enjoy the time, have an off season. I think that's an incredibly important point, because you hear about this now. Kids who play basketball all year, kids who play baseball all year, they need some time off. Okay? The other thing is they need to play more than one sport. I don't care what it is. They can go do ballet if they want, play golf, do whatever, but they have to play more than one sport. They really do need that. Okay? And these are some other ideas. But just come and cheer. Okay? And don't worry so much about your kids. I'll give you a story. I had a team one time up at Peoria Heights. And if you've ever been to the high school Peoria Heights, their field sits down in a little bowl, and the stands are like on a side of a hill. Okay? So my team's out there playing. These kids were sixth graders. And my running back goes around the side, and the linebacker came up to tackle him, just a bad angle. And when he threw his hand around to tackle him, a full fist right in the groin. Okay? And my kid just hits the ground. He's rolling all over. Okay? So we get everybody back. So I walk over. He's laying on his back. I grab his belt and kind of give him some air. And he's, and I said, "You okay?" And he shakes his head. And then he turns his head and he looks at the stands. And here comes his mom running down the stands. And he looked up at me and he goes, "No." And I was like, "Dude, don't worry." So I told one of my assistants, "Stop her from running out here," right? Because all he needed her to do was just be in the stands. He and I both knew what he was afraid of was mom was going to come out and do what mom does. Rub it. Okay? He didn't want that. All right? So we stopped her from coming. She did tell me, by the way, after the game when we didn't let her come out to her son, that if that ever happened again, I'd be the one who would have a growing problem. Another big issue right now can be coaches. There are bad coaches. Okay, I can tell you that for sure. I've seen them for years. There are bad coaches. We as a league, we try to get rid of them. We try to lean on our areas to get rid of them. But they're bad coaches. You can't coach the way we were coached. When I was in high school, my coach had a box on the edge of his desk in his office. It was full of little yellow pills. Anybody remember those? They were salt pills. And you were told to grab a handful and have those because that would help you replace the salt when you sweat. Okay? It was complete garbage. We can't do that. All right? So we have to be smarter. You cannot grab a kid by the helmet anymore. Okay? You can't yell at them. Why? They'll just quit. Back when I was a kid, if some coach yelled at me, you just took it because what else am I going to do? This is all I got, right? They've got so much other stuff they can go do. Try yelling. And by the way, this includes all the way to high school. As I talked to Coach Caslin about his team at Dunlap, you got to watch how you talk to kids now in high school. okay? So that you have to be better than that. There are good coaches out there, and they're humble. They know the game. They are teachers. Player safety is a huge issue to them. What they're worried about is retention rate, okay? What I tell every parent every year who kid plays football for me, my goal is not to win. My goal is that your son plays next year. And that's our goal, retention rates, okay? By the way, specialization, 1.3%. There are 1.3% of kids playing who are going to play, I'm talking about youth players who will play in college. The number is much smaller for professional, 1.3. So you think having them play basketball 12 months a year is a great idea? It's not. They're missing out on everything else, okay? Next, this is a huge problem, and it's officiating. In a recent study at the IHSA level, 23% of their referees are gone. 10 years ago, we had 13,700 officials. 5 years ago, 12,000. This year, 9,500 patched officials. What does that mean? This year, this fall, some small schools had to play their Friday night games on Thursday because there are not enough referees in football to have everybody have their Friday night lights. Okay, so they went to the smaller schools and just told them you can pick Saturday or you can pick Thursday. Most people don't want Saturday. The reason is they want people to come after work to use their concession stands because they make money that way. Okay, so if you show up at 1 o'clock for Saturday game, nobody's going to buy anything. So that really has an impact. What we have are officials like the guy on the left who are have a lot of experience. And we want that with officials, and they're being replaced by younger people, okay? We have high school kids now graduating, immediately taking the test, and they are umpiring or being officials in sports. Lack of experience, okay? Nice to have them, but lack of experience. So most of the officials now are in their 50s. By the way, you get 80 to 100 bucks for an IHSA football game. You have to drive yourself there, right? So, for example, here in Peoria, I know a couple of referees here who got assigned recently to games that were over in west part of Illinois, Macomb. You have to drive yourself to Macomb and drive yourself back, and you're supposed to be there at least 4 hours. If you're doing both games, you'll be there 6 hours, okay? That's how long it takes, and you're getting 100 bucks. Well, your gas is going to eat up a big chunk of that. So typically the people who are referees right now and umpires, they just love the game. That's why they're doing it. But unfortunately, we just don't have enough. You get replaced by these young guys down here on the right. That's who's officiating, okay? By the way, JFL games, even less money, even harder to find people there. And the other thing that happens is what happened to these two people here at the bottom. These are umpires, one softball, one baseball, who got beat up after the game. The lady on the left, the woman who hit her, and she was cold cocked, okay, wore a t-shirt that said Mother of the Year. That's no luck, okay? Let's skip a couple things here. We do have a statute in Illinois. If you throw punches against a coach or an official at a game, it is something you can be arrested for. And then lastly, the last thing that really has impacted youth sports is money. Here are some averages from an Ohio State study of how much it costs per year for your kid to participate in some of these sports. So everybody talks about lacrosse these days, right? Because you have to travel with the lacrosse stuff, you have to travel with a lot of these, you could spend upwards of $18,000 for your kid to play lacrosse. Okay? If you play, by the way, hockey here in Peoria, you're part of the Chicago League, right? And you have to travel to Chicago for your home games. They call that the Peoria rule, all right? Where does all that money go? Equipment, camps, private coaching. I had one of my sons play college football. Actually, two of them did. But one went to camps all over the United States, $300, $400 just to go to the camp, and then we had to go there. I mean, we spent the night in a hotel. We went to Vegas for a camp, stuff like that. And here's who's putting the money into it. Do you recognize any of these companies? They're all making money from youth sports by pushing money into youth sports. Okay? Here's the bad part. It's not all going to the kids who need it. It's just the kids who have the money to play. It's a pay or play deal, right? And it's not the kids who really need it. We do have good youth sports out there available. These are some pictures from teams that I've had. The one on the left is the camp that I run. The one down here, those are the kids that, when they grew up, they went to the state championship game for Dunlap High School, and then a couple of others. And this is why I do what I do. I call football games at Dunlap. I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid. Been doing it for 10 years. Because over there on the left, the kid who's the center, it's my son. He went to Dunlap. He played high school football at St. Ambrose University. That's the student section from a game this year at Dunlap. And that's my son Cooper, who played for Dunlap. Youth sports is good if you make it good. So I encourage you to go out, see a game sometime soon.